Let's make apricot mead. We're going to show you step by step how we made this recipe and give you tasting notes at the very end to see if it's right for you.
Let's get started. First thing I'd like to do to get started is I want to hydrate our yeast a little bit. I want to just put it in some water, make sure it's living, make sure we don't have, DOA. So may I have the water, please?
Sure.
We have just about 96 ounces of water in there, by the way. That's our water for the entire batch. I'm just pouring off a few ounces.
Today's yeast of choice is
Red Star Premier Classique yeast. Now, why did we choose this one?
We chose this one because in our research it said that it was good for fruity wines, not only reds but whites.
And apricot mead would be like a reddish, whitish kind of thing.
It's an orange.
Yeah, it's not really either. So we figured that might work pretty well. We also had half a packet. And I actually we've used this yeast a bunch of times.
We've enjoyed working with it.
It's about a 13% ABV potential. So that's the tolerance of it. So that brings me to a little bit of math that we're going to do today too. I don't really want to go past that 13% because I'd rather back sweeten a dry mead than hope that it finishes a little bit sweet. So that means I need to start at no higher than 1.096 original gravity. If you're curious how I got there, I took 13 and divided it by 135. Gives me 0.096 because I know it has to be higher than water. 1.096 is my absolute maximum starting gravity. So we will just be aiming towards that.
Now we have the bag of apricots out that we intend to use.
Just not today.
But these have sulfur dioxide.
Right.
Which is a preservative. So we know that if we add a preservative at primary, that may cause some issues for our fermentation process. So,
for two reasons, actually. First, the preservative itself could harm the yeast, but second, this exact yeast makes sulfur hydroxide compounds when there's a lot of sulfurous compounds in what it's fermenting. Because that's already in there, we don't want to make a bad problem worse. So we're going to add those in conditioning. I'm just mixing up the yeast a little bit just because, something to do. All right, what'll happen is, if they are in fact alive, they will start to form little bubbles, and they'll let us know that they're there. I also started up some black tea. We're going to use some black tea for the tannic aspect of this. I feel that apricots kind of need that. They do have the full fruit, so there's going to be some from the fruit, but I really think a little bit more was necessary, so I did 1 tea bag. This is in about a cup of water, but the amount of water isn't as crucial because it does get diluted through the whole batch.
Next.
Oh! We cleaned everything, and everything was sanitized in
the red sanitization.
It's important. That's pretty much the first step in any process for brew making, and we don't say that often enough. We do make the joke about the red bucket of sanitization, but we don't say it early enough. So if you're a brand new brewer, yes, sanitization is important, or sanitation, however you like to say it. I like to add extra syllables to things.
This is sanitized, that is sanitized, those things are sanitized, that was sanitized.
And what do we use for sanitizing?
Star San, which is our sanitizer of choice. If you cannot get it in your particular area, you may find a baby bottle sanitizer to work just as well.
Milton's, if you're in the UK, Milton's. One of our admins uses, actually 2 of them do. I think Paul and Adam both use it.
Yep.
Okay, when it comes to the honey, this is where things are going to get a little bit interesting today. We do have this Kirkland wildflower honey that we're going to use, and I think wildflower is probably a pretty good choice for this. It's going to add a little bit of a floral aspect. Apricots already have kind of a citrusy, interesting flavor. So
sure, we could use orange blossom, but I don't really want to push the citrus notes so much. I think wildflower or even a clover would be appropriate honey in my mind for this beverage.
Now, the question is, how much do we use? Now, if we know we don't want to be any higher than a 1.096, I'm going to use the calculator the teacher said would never be handy to figure out how much we need. Honey adds 0.035 specific gravity per pound in a gallon of must, not in addition to a gallon of water, in the gallon, mixed together. So if we know we don't want to be any higher than 1.096, so if I take 0.096 and I divide that by 0.035, that gives me 2.74 pounds of honey would be my absolute max. So my thought is, what if I do 2.25 pounds? It'll be a little bit below that. And 2.25 times 0.035 gives me about a 1.078. So it'll be like 1.080 starting gravity, which just for those of you that are curious, gives us something like a 10.6% ABV. So it's not as low as you might think. It's a moderate ABV, something easy drinking, because I don't think apricot with the heavy alcohol is going to work so well. And these are things that we do put thought into when we're creating these recipes, is what flavors work well with what. And in this case, I think something a little bit lighter might be more appropriate. So 2.25 pounds of honey. Do I risk it and just pour it, or do I need the funnel?
The choice is yours.
See if I can do it.
Totally.
All right, 2 pounds, 4 ounces of honey in the jar.
We no longer need our scale.
Right. But now we have all that honey in the bottom. I want to mix it up, so we need some water. And you know what? I did so well pouring the honey, I'm just going to pour the water. Getting crazy. And it's just water, so if I spill it, I really don't care. I'm going to go about halfway.
Do you want to add your tea at this time? Since it is warm, it'll help loosen that honey.
I think that's a good idea. By the way, this is just plain old black tea steeped for 3 minutes, okay? We find that 3 minutes seems to work better. We used to do 5, and now we find it's a nice smooth tannic aspect rather than, it was a little harsher before. Every drop is sacred. You know what I need?
The Thumb Saver Bung.
I do. Regular viewers, you know what I'm talking about. But this is the Thumb Saver Bung. It's just a solid rubber stopper, basically. Because the ones with the hole, if you put your thumb over it and you have to hold it for a long time, it starts to hurt a little.
Yeah.
So, Thumb Saver Bung. And now I'm shaking the bejesus out. But I'm also shaking some oxygen in. And that's evidenced by the color change instantly, just like that. And you want to mix this up real good. If you don't, yes, it'll still ferment. You just won't get an accurate reading to know where it is, how it started, or anything like that.
So our two things here is to get oxygen into our brew and to make sure all the honey that is sticking to the bottom currently is thoroughly mixed throughout the mixture.
Now, aeration is good in the beginning. Why?
Why? Well, good question. That's because yeasts need oxygen at the beginning to be fruitful and multiply, to build up their colonies so that way they can get to work and transferring those sugars into alcohol.
Yeah, the amount of yeast that you add is nothing compared to what size the colony will be. And a lot of people get that kind of mixed up. They, hold on. There we go. It has to spit at you, that's how you know you're doing it right. A lot of people get a little worked up over that, like adding a quarter of a packet or a half packet or a whole packet doesn't change the amount of alcohol you create. At best, it's kind of giving them a little bit better environment to start up in, and that's about it, really. As long as there's enough viable genetic material in there to begin with, they're going to produce a colony. It just may take a day or 2 or 3 days longer if you use less. So that's why we're kind of doing like the half packet for up to 3 gallons thing, and sometimes I'll use a whole packet. It's kind of at our whim. And depends on the brew. A higher gravity must, I will put more yeast in to give it a better head start. This is a little bit on the lower end, so I'm not too worried about half packet. Is perfectly fine. Though that was more than a half packet, realistically. I don't know what we did with that one before, but that was more than a half.
All right, you ready for more water?
I think we're ready for more water.
All right.
Oh, you're gonna pour it?
I'm gonna.
Okay. The whole world is watching. That'd be silly. If you're not having fun at what you're doing, you should be doing something else. That's my motto. We're being a little cautious here, but I know that a gallon is somewhere up around here. I do want to make sure our yeast gets in there. Let me give that a stir. I'm stirring it with the wuss.
The whisk of unusually small size.
Yep. Now, you don't have to hydrate your yeast. You can just dump it right in, just right out of the packet, and it's usually fine. I just like to kind of give it a little head start and know if it's alive or dead. Saw some bubble action. It's probably fine. maybe stop about there. So we have about that much in there now. I want to just kind of give this a bit of a swirl up to mix that all through. I'm going to take a gravity reading. I want to see, are we at our target or not? I'm using a hydrometer and a graduated cylinder, which it's not even graduated. This is a high school cylinder, I guess. So that way I can know about, what our sugar levels are. Basically, it's a double check of our math from earlier. Nice way to see it that way. Remember, 1.096 is my maximum that it can be, but I'm really looking for something like a 1.080, I think is where we said. I'm seeing 1.082. I'm okay with that. Now, could we add a little bit more water and go down a little bit more? Of course you can. In this case, I'm happy with this amount of space. Head space in primary, the only reason to not have it is if you want more must. But the reason to have some head space in primary is so it doesn't erupt all over your kitchen or whatever room you happen to be fermenting in.
Speaking of erupting, we're going to place this on a half baking tray that has edges, if you will. So that way, if it does erupt, it'll be caught within that tray rather than dispersed all over our kitchen.
But there's other things that we need to do before we get to that point. One of them, I want to check the pH on this. We've been forgetting to do it before adding the yeast, but it's
shame on us.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. Generally speaking, we like to see a 4 to a 5 to 5.5 pH on our musts when we're fermenting. Anything below 4 can be a little bit dangerous for the yeast, so we try to avoid that. Whoa, I think we're good.
Super green.
Super green. Green is a good color with these. We will have a link to these in the description. These are originally intended for kombucha, but they work great. I'm going to call that somewhere between, that's like 4.5. Spot on. That's beautiful.
Perfect.
Honey is a little acidic, and when you dilute it in the water, it keeps the acidity down a little bit. That's why you'll still see it at like 4 to 4.5, sometimes even lower. But 4.5 is perfect. Now, something I want to talk about, I just glossed over the pH reading, but pH is super important. We're finding it more and more important as we go, because if the pH is too low, your yeast will literally not ferment. And if it's too high, same thing. That's why we give that range. Every yeast is a little bit different, but generally 4 to 5.5 is appropriate for pretty much all yeast. So that's a nice, easy rule of thumb. That's the word I was looking for, rule of thumb. So as long as you know you're in that range, if something happens where it stalls or whatever, you know that pH is not the reason it stalled.
Also, something to keep in mind is the fermentation process itself is an acidifier. So it's going to raise the acidity, thus lowering the pH in your brew as it continues to ferment. So if you're close to that edge of being too acidic, then the fermentation process itself may cause a stall.
But what do we need now?
We need a stopper and an airlock.
We do. All right, so stopper. All right, so stopper and airlock, pretty important stuff. I'm just going to jam it in there and hope it stays. I don't like these particular stoppers. They're like a silicone rubber. They just popped. It just popped everything.
Right.
I've never seen that happen before.
Let me go get another stopper.
Okay, this stopper right here, he's fired.
All right, so we're back to our handy dandy rubber 6.5 number bung.
And look at that. It just stays right in. It didn't pop the airlock out. I've never seen that happen before. That was the first.
It might need a rubber band. I'm not sure.
It might. We'll put a rubber band on it off camera. It's okay.
And by that, I mean we're going to just loop a rubber band around here.
Just
to keep it a little pressure to keep it.
Yeah. Just don't use super glue. Somebody said they did that.
No.
That's a bad idea on so many levels.
All right, so what are we going to do?
We're going to let this sit for probably a couple weeks. What'll happen as fermentation starts up? Gases inside here will force their way up into the airlock and push this side down and that side up. That is normal, and gases will escape. You want your lid to stay on? There's usually little holes in it or a slit in the side. It's all good. This will look like a lava lamp. Stuff will be going up and down and foam everywhere. You're just over there doing interpretive.
I am.
And then eventually it'll start to slow down, and that's normal. It could take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month, depending on temperature, depending on a million other factors. And when it does slow down, we'll be back to show you what to do next. As a perfect example of you don't need to rush things, this has been sitting for 5 weeks. The airlock is pretty much not moved in about 3.5. But it's okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a reading on it and see if it's done. Well, we already have a new container because I'm pretty sure it is. By reading, I mean a specific gravity reading, of course, using a hydrometer and graduated cylinder. I highly recommend having this, especially for newer brewers. It gives you a really good indication of what's going on and if things are done or not. The idea that you can just taste it and know if it's done, I don't trust that myself, and I've been doing this for a long time. I like having numbers. Makes me feel all like mad sciencey too, you know? It's got the slightest bit of a haze to it, which that's not really a problem. I just can usually tell if something is close to or done from the clarity level of it. And after 5 weeks, I would have thought that this would have a little bit better clarity, but it's really not. It's not bad. That is 0.994. It's done.
It's super done.
Okay, now, just because I have to be that guy, I'm going to grab the calculator the teacher said I would never have handy, and we're going to do a quick alcohol calculation. So we started at 1.082. We ended at 0.994. That means we used up 88 points of gravity times 135 gives us 11.88%. I'm just going to call that 12%.
Which completely ruins my joke of it. Ours goes to 11.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Ours goes past 11. Okay, now that 12% is going to get a little bit diluted by some of the things that we're going to do to it later. But first, we need to get it from this container into this container. And to do that, we are going to rack it.
I have a question for you, Brian.
What is your question for me, Derica?
Part of our concept is we're going to add solids to a liquid.
Yes, we are.
And we learned recently from a project where we added solids to a liquid that it makes a big giant mess. Would you like to add the solids first?
I think we should add the solids first. Speaking of solids, we have here from Oh Nuts, a large bag. It is actually 2 pounds of dried apricots because this is supposed to be an apricot mead, and so far it's just a mead. So we got to add the apricot to the mead to make it apricot mead. Now, the thing that I was looking for with these is I wanted them to actually look like apricots because I've gotten some that were like dark colored and stuff, but I didn't want too many chemicals either. These, it's apricots and sulfur dioxide. Now, that is a preservative, and that's what makes the color stay. But you see, they look like nice apricots. However, here's the thing. I don't want it to ferment anymore. So a little bit of preservatives in there, probably not going to be a problem. But like Derica said, we are just going to dump them all in. I think we chose well with the container, too.
Yep.
It smells like apricots.
It does. I kind of just want to eat these, but...
Notice I didn't even eat one.
I know.
I actually really like dried apricots.
We both do.
All right, this we don't need anymore. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to rack from this into this, and for that we're going to need an auto siphon. But I also want to pour this sample in. And of course, you know, like any good home brewer does, I'm going to save some at the bottom. I mean, you know, you got to taste it.
It tastes like mead.
Yep.
Because it's mead.
It's not bad. For dry, it actually has a really nice honey character.
Cool.
That was the Kirkland honey, too.
All right.
Wow. Premier Classique yeast. Really did a nice job on that.
All right, let me get the auto siphon, and we'll be right back.
Yes. Okay. As we always do, we're using an auto siphon. And it's very, very simple. There's a cap on the end that we're going to leave because we got a moonscape going on here of leaves in the bottom.
Actually, it's reminding me of a pancake right now.
Yeah, it does kind of, or like, not a pancake.
English muffin.
Nope. What's the other one? Crumpets.
Crumpets.
Looks like a crumpet. That's what it looks like. Anyway, so the way it works is you put this in and you give it a couple of pumps and it starts the flow. As long as this source is higher than the destination. Real demonstration here. Just like this. Get it going. As few strokes as possible is the way you want to go. That way you don't take a chance of oxygenating your brew. But we're just going to let this rack and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we got everything into our fermenter. I am just going to swirl this around a little bit, get a little CO2 action going on, because there's a little bit of headspace here. But we didn't degas this at all, so I don't really think oxidation is a problem here. We have so much CO2 in here, which will all come out naturally all on its own. Took my notes, put my label on, it foamed over. And what are we going to do with it next?
I'm going to let it sit.
Probably a couple weeks.
Yeah, we want to make sure all of the apricot-y goodness gets infused into our mead.
Now, something I know someone's going to ask. What if we blended them? What if we chopped them up? You can. It might help it extract a little faster, but in the end, I think you're going to get the same amount of flavor. Might just need a little bit longer time. And I'm actually okay with that because that's a lot of apricots to try to chop up, and they're sticky. You try putting that in a blender or food processor, it's just going to make a mess. I am all for leave it another week versus have to deal with the mess and sticky fingers. Nope, no thank you. One more week is good for me. So we'll see you when this has extracted the flavors. All right, it's been about 2 weeks, and, well, the apricots really puffed up a lot. It's kind of crazy. Let me show you. I mean, look at those apricots. They're like full size again. They just completely puffed up. They filled with all of our mead, so we got to figure out what to do about that. But first, we're going to rack it to a wide mouth 1 gallon fermenter. By the way, I'd like to give an update on this fermenter. The glass is great. The fermenter itself is fine. This lid arrangement, I think the hard-edged grommet just sucks, okay? If we had a softer grommet, I think this would be okay, but the lid is very, very soft. It fell out twice just in sitting in our fermentation, so not my favorite way to go. There's others, like the 5-liter clear thing. That's a good one. We'll put a link to that in the description. This smells amazing. It's super clear as well. These are just really, really good signs. So we're just gonna start the racking process. There really isn't any lees in here, okay? So I'm gonna leave the cap on because I have an idea. And I'm just gonna get in there and get going, get as much out as I can and push way down into that fruit. I'm going for it all the way to the bottom. There we go. Oh, wow, it's really, really crowded in there. All right, it's all the way to the bottom, I think. Now it's all the way to the bottom. See you in a couple minutes. Okay, so we're done with racking, but there's... What are you doing?
I'm trying to get all the stuff out of the hose.
Oh, there was stuff in the hose. Here's the problem. We have all these lovely filled apricots now. They're rehydrated. So what we got is some cheesecloth and a bowl. And we're going to...
Both the bowl and the cheesecloth have been sanitized.
Yeah. We're going to dump the apricots and the remaining juice, well, mead, it's not just juice, in there, maybe just a little at a time. And I'm gonna mash them up.
Smoosh.
Hands are sanitized, everything's sanitized. I'm gonna squeeze out as much as I can. The trick here is I'm doing it very close to the bowl so I don't oxidize. I know this isn't the best way to go. It just seems like a huge waste to not try to get some of this out. It is gonna cloudy it up a little bit, I'm aware. But, I mean, there's already a cup or two of liquid in here. I can't justify leaving that behind. Now, could you use this fruit in something? Sure, probably. I don't know. I would imagine you could. It's feeling kind of nasty right now, though. This is not my favorite thing in the world to do. It's probably one of my least favorite things in the world to do. But sometimes you just got to do what needs to be done.
You have to suffer for your art.
There's probably a better way to do this. Can you get that one? Get in there. There we go. Whew. And now I get to do it all again. The joys of being a home brewer. I would imagine this could sit for hours and still drip out liquid. But you know what I'm also thinking? I don't think we're going to have a full gallon. Because I'm not going to sit here for hours draining this, I'll tell you right now. I just wanted to show this in case you felt like getting everything out and really making a mess.
Ryan is instantly regretting his decision.
Yeah, I'm thinking this wasn't such a great idea. Not liking this at all. All right, I'm done. You know.
Do you want a bowl? Do you want a towel?
I want this to not be in my hands anymore. Okay. So in hindsight, don't do that. I gotta wash my hands now. All right, so after that debacle was done, I ended up with a little bit more of the mead. So I'm just gonna dump this in, but carefully. So dump is probably not the right word. Pour carefully. We don't want to oxidize. I didn't get much, a couple cups. There's probably a better way, okay? But because of that, this thing's not full. I don't really like having that much headspace, so we're gonna rack it from here to here, but I don't need...
Don't do that.
This is a 3/4 gallon fermenter. We actually got these from Amazon. They're actually really nice. They're very, very cool fermenters. So it's like an intermediary size. Price was pretty good too, as I recall, but there'll be links to it in the description below. So I took the bottom cap off so it can go all the way to the bottom, and we're gonna rack it. I know this seems like a lot of racking, but you know what? It's better to not leave that much headspace than to leave it. So in this case, taking the risk of extra racking made sense. And by risk of extra racking, every time you rack, you always expose it to a little bit of oxygen. In our instances and in our experiences over the years, it's never been a problem, but it's something to be aware of. It could potentially be a problem. It's better, okay? This is not ideal still. It still has a lot of headspace, but it's acceptable, all right? So before you get crazy about headspace, that's okay. It's not the best, but it still works. So we're just gonna stick an airlock back in. Oh, look at that. It actually fits nice and tight. We haven't really used these a lot yet, but we got a couple of them and we decided to give them a shot. Stick my note back on. This will go back in the fermentation for probably another week. And once it clears out, we'll be back to show you the next step. A week ago, we racked it. And, you know, it's time to rack it again and figure out if we need to do anything else to it. So we got a pitcher. We're using our pitcher with the raised letters. Now, I make a big deal about this pitcher, but every single time someone gets one, well, not every time someone gets one, but every single time I mention it, someone always says, I got one, it's the most awesome thing ever. Seriously, it's an awesome pitcher. It has a nice sharp spout so you can pour really, really well. The markings are very clear and it has metric and imperial units together so you can clearly see which you have. That's why we use it. Plus, it's much easier to mix stuff in there than it is in a fermenter. So, we're going to rack again. The unfortunate part of this is we're ending up with a lot less final product than I really like. That's just the way it is sometimes.
Those apricots just sucked up a lot of our juice, and sometimes...
And it was gross trying to squeeze them out.
It was unpleasant.
So, whatever. But now we're going to adjust, okay? And for that, what that means is we're going to take a small taste and decide, does it need anything? Whether that's sweetness, acidity, tannins, anything. Extra flavor components. It's meant to be an apricot mead, so we don't want to go too far off the flavor trail.
The aroma at this point is questionable.
Questionable. Uh-oh. It also could need some age. Mm-hmm. Oh, I see what you mean. Mm-hmm. It's a little rough. Mm-hmm. Now, this is literally just some honey, Premier Classique yeast, black tea, water, and dried apricots. That's all that's in this so far.
I was really careful when I was drinking it to not inhale at all. I just stopped breathing.
It's very young, is what I'm getting.
Very young.
It's also very dry, 0.994.
Yep. But if you get on in there, that's apricot.
Wow.
Yep.
The taste is way better than the smell.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
That actually almost tastes good right now.
I think it does need some honey, though, because I'm definitely getting more apricot than honey.
More apricot than honey, yep. So, let me get the honey. Since we used Kirkland wildflower honey in the beginning, we're going to use it again. Now, since this, I don't believe this is at 994, because we added the apricots, but we didn't check the gravity since then. So, I think it stopped and it led some sugars, because this is reading as sweeter than 994.
Yep.
Either that or I'm just getting really used to very dry beverages, which I don't think so.
Oh.
Oh boy.
Great googly moogly.
Well, that's just crazy.
So that was just from the apricots?
1.040.
Dang.
Wow.
That's a lot from apricots.
No kidding. So, we sure we want a sweetness?
We don't have any more apricots.
No, you didn't see that. 22,
yeah,
24.
I know it's not good for you. I still think it needs more honey. Maybe just a little bit.
Are you sure?
I'm not getting honey on the flavor, and it might just be the youth that's getting in the way. Brian needs to reassess.
Yes, I do.
The numbers are getting in the way of his brain.
1.040 is kind of high. The crazy thing is this is 12% ABV. We tested all that, and then we added the apricots to it.
Yeah.
They added a ton of sugars to this.
And that's why I was wondering if we still had the apricots to see if they had added sugars, because lots of dried fruit has added sugars.
They probably do.
I'm thinking they had added sugars.
Okay.
Just a little bit of honey.
My opinion on this is it could use more honey character. I agree. It's quite sweet as it is, which that's what struck me right off the bat. I'm thinking this actually needs some acidity.
Okay.
So a little more honey and some acidity.
Honey for you, or honey for me, acidity for you.
Yep.
Meat in the middle. That's compromise, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so the way we sweeten, if you've watched our show before, is we dump in some sweetener and then we taste it. Go ahead, get your finger on there. You know you want to. Oh, yeah, I gave you a big glob that time. And now to mix it, I'm going to use the spattle. It's a spoon. It's a paddle. It's both. Link in the description below. And when you mix, be gentle. Because if you mix it too hard, you oxygenate it. And that's a bad thing.
I like how you used your sexy voice when you were talking about being gentle with the mixing. That
was my sexy voice? Didn't realize I had a sexy voice.
It was his calming, soothing. What's the term now? Book boyfriend? It's your book boyfriend voice.
The what?
You see, he doesn't know these things. It's okay.
No. What the heck is a book boyfriend voice? I don't get it.
It's people who like to read books and romance the characters in the books. So a book boyfriend can say things that a real life boyfriend could never say because it's ridiculous.
Sure. All right. Nope.
Nope.
When it shows up on the spattle, you know the honey's not mixed in. Gonna get as much mileage out of that joke as I possibly can. And through the magic of television, I now have North Mountain Acid Blend and half a teaspoon measure. Now it says a teaspoon raises the acidity, blah, 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 in a gallon. We have just under 3/4 of a gallon. So I'm just gonna use a half teaspoon. I don't think it needs a lot. It needs something, okay? It just needs a little something.
That's not gonna change the gravity reading, is it?
No.
Okay.
And I'm doing it all together because I think the effect, the cumulative effect of both of those things together is going to make this into a magical apricot mead.
All right, do you want to mark that you added a half a teaspoon?
I'm going to mark that I added half a teaspoon. Are you ready to have your mind blown? Does it smell the same?
It smells similar, yes.
Should have a slight more honey smell. Don't hurt yourself.
I bashed my hand on the table.
Oh, I thought you poked your eye out with the spattle.
I'm surprised I didn't do that too. Luckily, I have my protective eyewear on.
Oh, wow. That is spot on. It's got a nice sweetness, nice apricot flavor, nice bit of tartness.
Yep.
Acidity, it's a little bright.
Yep.
But it also feels more viscous. Doesn't feel watery. It felt watery before. Now it doesn't feel watery.
It still has the youthy
mouthfeel.
After.
Oh, the smell is still not great. I think it needs some time to sit.
I think it needs to sit and think about what it's done.
But also, right now, we are at a turning point with this particular brew. Because normally, when you sweeten something, I would say, now you got to pasteurize it, or else you're going to run into problems.
You have to math.
This was already at 1.040 today when we got to it.
Oh,
it was done.
Right.
We just added a little bit more and then added acid blend.
Yeah.
So this was 12%. It probably fermented a little bit of those apricots.
But because it had so many sugars left over and it's been sitting,
it's fine.
Now,
it's fine.
To clarify, this has not stalled.
Right.
It simply has fermented beyond its alcohol tolerance. Yeah. So the sugars that are still left aren't going to be fermented because the yeast are like, nope,
right.
I'm done.
We use Premier Classique yeast, which is like, I think about a 13% or so. So this is probably in the 12 to 13% range. The exact number is just not that crucial. But that means it's done, and it went beyond that. Because if it could still ferment, there's no way this would have been 1.040 when I read it today. So that's why I know it's perfectly safe to put this under airlock right now for like a month and bottle it down the road. Because if it had any more fermentation it was going to do, it would do it during that time period.
Now notice what Brian said. We're going to bulk age this under airlock. So that way, just some weird,
if by any chance,
wine thing, and it decides to, hey, I'm going to ferment now, we're safe because we're under airlock, and so we're not going to explode. Right?
Whoa. All right, so I just want to see where it's at now. Like, because we did add some honey. We raised it a bit. 1.048. And I know that sounds incredibly sweet. It does to me, too. I'll be totally honest. It sounds crazy sweet.
But if you think about apricots,
they kind of need it, though.
They have their own natural, like, kind of acidic funk going on if you just eat a dried apricot.
That's true.
So because we're trying to make an apricot mead, we're going to have to bump up that honey flavor to fight that. And that's what we had to do here.
Just want a last verification taste. Yeah, I would normally say at that kind of level, it should taste like sickly sweet.
It does not.
No. It's got just enough acidity and tartness to really combat that. And I think there's actually a good amount of tannin, too. I'm getting a mouth-drying effect. All the skin, well, not skins, but the whole fruit of the apricot in there really did a job on that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do next, this is going to go back into a fermenter with an airlock, sit in the ferment station, see when it's ready. Okay, so it's been another week, and we put it in the glass. It's got a slight haze, okay? It's not absolutely clear. Could we have put pectinase or something in there to get rid of it? Yeah, possibly.
I actually am enjoying the haze along with this color. It's kind of reminding me of champagne where it has that frosty look to it.
Nice.
Rather
it's not,
than... there's some chunks.
It's not objectionable looking. On the smell, it still has that funk. There's something going on there.
It does.
It doesn't smell horrible, but there's definitely something to it.
It's almost chemically.
Yeah.
And I'm going to attribute that to the dried apricots.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, like I say, it's not objectionable, but I'm getting a little bit of the honey in there. This is just honey, Premier Classique yeast, black tea. We adjusted the pH. Actually, no, we didn't even adjust the pH.
The pH was 4.5 start.
And then we added dried apricots afterwards. So it just sat on apricots. The apricots probably didn't really ferment much. So, yeah.
There are some white wines that have a similar aroma, so it's not like we did something wrong. It's just not really our ballgame.
Ooh. Wow. On the taste, though, it's rich. There's a new word for you. Rich and luscious is what I was going after. It's got a really nice mouthfeel. It's not a huge tannic quality, but there is some, just enough to balance things out.
The honey is definitely there.
Oh, yeah.
It reads...
This is mead, without a doubt.
Reads mead.
Yeah.
Yeah, the flavor is a gajillion times better than the aroma.
I'm hoping that it's just some sort of an off flavor produced from the fermentation process that makes the smell. This exact yeast makes sulfur hydroxide compounds when there's a lot of sulfurous compounds in what it's fermenting. That'll pass in time. We're probably going to, just so you know, this will sit in this container in the ferment station for probably a month or two before we bottle it. I know there's some extra headspace there. I'm going to risk it. Okay, I don't recommend you do that, but I'm going to risk it in this case because I don't have another container to put it in right now. And if I rack it, I'm going to lose even more. Let it sit for a while, and then we'll rack it. Might only be a few weeks.
The reason why we do that is so that we end up with a clearer bottle as our final product.
Plus, in this case, I wanted to get some of that smell away.
Sediment is still coming out. It just and it will continue to come out even if we let it sit.
Right.
It's just part of the process, and I'm sure you've noticed that in some really high quality wines. There's a little bit of sediment in the bottle, and that's normal.
Now, as far as the smell, I know every time we say anything negative, people take it really strongly. So I just want to point out that this is very pleasurable as it is. The smell is not really off-putting, and once you get accustomed to the taste, the smell actually makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not that disparate, okay? But it isn't as pleasant as I'd like it to be. That's the easiest way to say it.
It has the neat little apricot tang effect on your tongue at the end, which I actually find really pleasurable because it's like, oh, yeah, this is apricot.
There's even a nice little acidic kick to it.
Yep.
I think this is a good one. I think this came out nice.
Yeah.
Like, I would definitely drink this. It would also make a great mixer for a lot of different things. You can really play with this one a lot.
I see a fuzzy navel style beverage with this.
All right, well, let's start thinking about numbers here.
All right.
So the first is repeatability. Looking over our notes and thinking about this, there was really nothing here that was difficult. It's your basic mead with some black tea. Let it finish. It went dry. Added dried apricots to it. Let them sit for a while. It did not continue. Now, that's the only thing that could be a little bit iffy, is if yours didn't go completely dry, you might have to work on that. Or if your apricots continued fermenting. Ours stopped, okay?
Yeah.
If yours continued fermenting, that adds an extra little complexity. I'm going to give this a 9 for
Sure.
repeatability.
I can agree
I don't
with
think
that.
it's that hard.
Yeah.
A brand new person to this could totally do it. By the way, we did add acid blend to this.
At the end.
That's where that
Yep.
little kick is coming from.
Yep.
A little bit of acid blend. And we did add a little bit of honey to it too as well to get more honey flavor because there was a lot of apricot flavor.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
So repeatability, easy. Now on to our scoring system. Basically, it's 1 through 11. Under 5, we probably would dump it out. Everything else is good to great. Okay? That simple. Well, it's true. Okay, so do you have a number? This is the hard part.
Yeah. I have a number.
Okay.
Sure.
1, 2, 3,
9.
8.5.
9.
Wow. Okay.
9.
I was debating between 8 and 9, so I went 8.5.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying all the aspects of it. I like the honey forward notes. I like that it's distinctly apricot. Really, the reason why I knocked it down to 9 is because of the smell, and I'm anticipating
specialty brew,
the smell to go away. So
yeah,
I'm
I think the
not
smell's going to
concerned
go
about
away
it.
by the time we do the 1 year tasting, which that's something we always do when we bottle. One bottle will go away 1 year from today or thereabouts will be the 1 year tasting, just to see how it changed. Some of the reasons why I didn't go higher is it's good, but it's kind of 2 notes. You know what I mean? There's like not a lot of deep complexity here. It's also a very niche kind of specialty.
Sure.
It's not the kind of thing that you just have on, like any day of the week. It's very rich, very filling for flavor. So it's kind of a...
It's like a dessert.
Yeah, it's a little much sometimes. And it is actually a very high gravity. So this is definitely like dessert or after dinner type of thing. Not something you want to have a lot of because... It probably will get a little overly much, you know. Now, in a year, that may change too. We don't know. But, yeah, that's why I gave it like an 8.5. I think it's really nice, and I would drink it, but it's not like I'm going to drink 2 gallons of it in a sitting kind of thing. I don't think I drink 2 gallons of much of anything in a sitting, but you know what I mean.
If you're a fan of apricots and you're a fan of mead, I highly suggest you give this a try.
Absolutely. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.